Hello.
Hey, it worked.
Hey, it works just great. So, I tried to do the screen recording thing earlier and I couldn't get both voices. I know I can download this video after the fact. The only problem is it won't show the comments, but I think that'll get our video and audio just fine. And then I'm going to post it to my YouTube afterwards.
I've done that before. I use Android and I wonder if I think Instagram sometimes just forgets about that. I don't know if that's a known thing or not, but I've
Yeah,
had issues with it too.
I tried to crash like research, like maybe there's an app for it. No, nothing. So I think eventually I'll do a recording of it from my phone and download it and then maybe overlap it so people can see the comments. But
I've
um,
done that too, where I just download the audio using like a mic and then I
mhm.
just match it up, and that's worked once. That worked.
Cool. Well, let's hop right into it. I guess I want to start by asking. I don't know anything about you other than you're like a data hound like me, and you're a bug guy. But maybe you
Um,
could like, give us a quick elevator speech on who you are, where you came from, and how you got to what you do now.
Nope, that's all there is to me. No, I'm kidding. Um, so I'm born and raised in San Diego. I'm residing in San Diego currently. I am 27 years old. Matthew Gates is my name. Your name is Dustin.
Yep, Dustin
Yep,
Powers, and
Dustin
I'm the same,
Powers.
same age, or maybe I'm 28.
Okay, okay. Um, and I went. So I mean, so how do I put this? I am an IPM specialist, so that's an integrated pest management specialist, and I kind of cut my teeth in agriculture on in floriculture, actually, in horticulture. That's where I first started working in like the agricultural industry as a major discipline.
Floriculture being flowers,
Yeah, not this kind of floriculture, the other kind of floriculture.
cut flowers.
Yeah,
Did you go to school for this, or
yeah, I went to SDSU.
okay? And so did you finish that? You got a degree?
hmm
Nice.
Horticultural science.
Oh, cool.
So
Was
not
that
really. So I'm not. So yeah. So that's a thing. That's a thing that I think a lot of people, and this is a good thing to mention. I don't have like a PhD in entomology. Like I'm
mhm.
not like an entomologist like plenty of like my mentors. A lot of my mentors growing up are doctors of entomology or phytopathology. But I work in the phytopathological field.
Okay.
And I've also worked as a lab tech and things like that as well. So that's where a lot of my interest from genetics comes from.
Okay.
Also, like one of the first books I can remember reading was like an evolution book that was like pretty thin, kind of big with lots of pages. Um, so I've always been interested in that kind of stuff too, and it's so important for plants, right? With resistance and things like that.
Sure. Sure. So now you're working as a private consultant, or do you have a full-time job doing this too, or what do you got going
Yeah,
on?
yeah. So that's basically what I do. Is I work with people as a consultant, but I also work. I'm also employed at a few other companies that are local here as well, and so it's
Oh,
kind of
cool.
a nice back and forth.
Yeah.
They're flexible. They're actually it's really nice. They're flexible enough that they allow me to go out for short trips,
Oh,
which
excellent.
is
Yeah, that's can be key, especially where we're at with this industry right now, is leaving yourself the freedom to be able to work outside of some of these companies because there's so much opportunity.
right. And I totally like, and that's one thing that I like about you too, and what I've seen with the permaculture and like just trying to like own your own infrastructure. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very old model to keep your IP secret and kind of lock down with one company. You look at how people are, nobody's holding down a job for 50 years and retiring anymore. So keeping yourself
No,
free to adapt to how things change is crucial.
no, and
Um,
I've said this to people. Oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
this is about you.
I've said this to people a lot. Where like, I mean, like this probably sounds a little bit cavalier, but like I I don't trust really any company to like have my best interests at heart. They might though. I just don't trust that they will. You
Sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying nobody ever does or anything like that, but I don't ever let myself get that comfortable.
Sure, it's a
for that
safe way to
reason.
approach it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I feel the
I'm here
same
to
way.
build
I
it.
run like reverse NDAs with these companies that I work with, and it's like, look, we're probably if we develop something new here, you can use it however you want, but I'm going to use it however I want too, and we're going to put that in contract so that you can't. It's not. I don't want to hide it from other people, but I don't want you to be able to hide it from other people on my behalf. Like lock it down, say it's my IP. So
I'm I've had conversations with people recently about how like some people are fundamentally stuck in that mindset because that's where they come from, and that's unfortunate because it can fundamentally limit your ability to grow. I think I mean, of
absolutely.
course, you've seen all the videos that most people know me because of the videos that I post here, and on my YouTube channel, right?
Yeah. So how did you even find me but to see me spreading open source information? Like if I hadn't have done that, we would have never
Right.
even met, right? So that's always a fun one. So when you're, say I'm going to hire you to do some IPM with my cannabis garden, I'm assuming that you do a lot of work like that, IPM with cannabis.
hmm
So what's kind of like your general approach? What's that look like?
So I do what I call a site evaluation. And when I look through like the IPM lens, one of the biggest things, so like before I even go to wherever I'm going to go, I research the location if it's not like let's say it's not a local place. Um, so I like to get information, even like sort of obscure data, um, like how high is the elevation, or like what are the plants like. I always try to familiarize myself also with the like extension agency if there is one that kind of operates close there, or if I'm not familiar with it already. um, I do a bunch of that pre-planning stuff first, and then when I go onto the site I look at the plants that are on the field. Even obviously, like some people are growing no-till, some people are trying to have a cover crop, some people are trying to companion plant. Some people grow the vegetables that they eat on site, right? All of those things come together, and just assessing like all the plant life and all the flora and all the fauna that I can within reason, depending on how big it is and that kind of a thing. And
Sure.
then, well, one thing that I like to do before I go there is I like to see what some of the pests that are already there are, because cannabis is such a new crop. I mean, it's a new crop, but it's an
Yeah.
academic. It's more allowed, right? So one important thing to do is that there's always going to be pests, and there's going to be new pests, and this is true for. I mean, plants we've been growing for millennia, so it's going to be true for cannabis probably. And most cannabis pests aren't specialized on cannabis,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So
Overlap.
right. So that's another part of that. So I just like kind of keep a very open mind about what may or may not be infesting cannabis until we like really like have a good decade or two probably of like
Of course.
intense research going on.
Of course. And so, I mean, pesticides are a huge issue in California cannabis specifically. So, what is kind of like some general strategies you use to target pest management without using pesticides?
So like biocontrol agents, right? So like predatory mites, um, parasitic wasps, and that kind of stuff, depending on where you are and what your setup is and what your finances are, like that, those all factor in too. Because like
Of course.
sometimes, right? Because like some places you just can't you can get certain biocontrols in America, for example, in either of the Americas,
Sure.
um, where you would normally be able to get it in Europe or the Netherlands or something like that, for
Okay.
example. So you
You
got
get a
to
lot of
know
people.
what's available.
Did people complain about bug poop?
Yeah, not typically. I do get it though. I hear it more on the internet than I do in
Yeah.
person.
You hear a lot of dumb things on the internet.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
No, but like I guess I understand it conceptually, but like I do feel like it's like the post. I really liked the post that you made about like toxoplasmosis.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
thought you might like that one. There's
yeah,
definitely
like this is
it.
this is probably not an endearing thing to say on the internet in this age. I mean, cats have been such a like meme for like the
Sure.
entire like modern internet, right? So I'm probably
Yeah.
going to make a lot of comments, bad comments when I say they're not great for the ecology. Like there
Oh
are
no,
studies that
they're fucking up birds and all sorts of rodents. Yeah, all in the selfish
but
needs of humans for pets. Yeah, I'm not a huge
I
fan of cats.
understand.
I respect the shit out of it. But
I understand needing a mouser. Like I get it. I understand like the logic that goes into that, but like
sure.
yeah, the fallout from that has been great. And maybe there's a solution maybe. I'm not saying like kill all the cats,
Yeah.
but
No,
like
it's just they need to be in a holistically managed system. Like we have one farm cat on the farm because our farming has increased the amount of rodents exponentially. So you got to have some balance because there's not enough predators. Now, if there was enough
right.
bobcats out there, I wouldn't need to have a little house cat, and we'd be good to go.
Sure. And if you have like a local infestation like on your farm or something, then they're going to get a little bit out of control and that can happen. So like I
Right.
understand that and I'm not like an advocate for like euthanizing all of the like but like I
Right.
do think it's important to like really consider that like the academic literature is pretty solid on this. It's not just some person who's like anti-pets.
Sure, sure. But I think at the very least we need to spay and neuter cats. And that sounds a little ridiculous, but like I didn't really notice it until I moved to the little small town that I'm at, and the feral cat population is out of control. To the point where they're out there rounding up cats every day, getting them spayed, neutered, and putting them back in, and it's still a crazy problem. So, I mean, at the very least, we can do that.
Right. But I mean like it's difficult, it's hard. It's kind of out of control. Really what it is out of control right now is what it
Sure.
is, I think. And it could be
Yeah, yeah.
less it could be more in control, right?
I agree. Yeah, we've a lot of people let their emotions dictate their decisions instead of logic, and then a lot of people will take a hardline approach like, oh, we need to get rid of all the cats, and that just divides people. So that's not a
Right.
solution, right? And
No,
that
certainly not.
that's a bigger problem in the country as a whole with any problem, right? Somebody has one opinion and the other person has a diametrically opposite one, and then they fight over the middle ground. It's ridiculous.
So much of politics is that, right? Just
Yeah,
fundamentally.
everything. It's wild. Just humans. That's a very human tribal thing, I think.
Sure.
So what do you think about russet mites? I saw briefly a bunch of comments where people said russet mites, russet mites. So we got any like quick and easy solutions there?
Yeah. Go to church, develop religion, and ask for no, it's not like that. A lot of people have that reaction though.
Yeah, burn it
Um,
all down. We're fucked.
yeah, no. So my favorite solution, and this goes back to the permaculture thing that we were talking about before, is that there are a few solutions. I think on a grand scale, on a strategic scale, globally, one thing you can do is not eradicate all the cannabis plants out there, but if you can try to curtail like some of the ditchweed, you can have some beneficial effects there. Now, maybe that's not a good cost benefit analysis for other things you could be doing with that. I mean, ecology, it's hard to screwing around with ecology, is a problem. But one thing that you can do is have a necessary plant growth in all pests, and that could be russets for certain people in general. More specific, as you kind of go into a more granular situation with IPM, like at a single facility or a site or whatever, one thing that you can also do is have biocontrols established in your crop. And one thing, and I love one of my favorite research reports is the one that I've talked about many, many times about pepper plants. And you can have Swirsky and other pollinivorous predatory mites living in on that crop of peppers. For like you can get like 1,200 on one plant according to one study.
Polynivorous, does that mean they eat multiple plants?
Pollinivorous means that they eat pollen.
Oh, polliniferous. I see.
Pollinivorous. I stuttered.
Sure, sure. I thought you meant poly, but I see pollen. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I saw on one of your posts that you did some, or you were interested in pepper breeding and as well as mint breeding. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so when I was like in my teens, I one of my silliest things that I ever tried was to I'm very bad at grafting, but
Okay,
I was very earnest and I wanted to graft like two peppers
sure,
together. Like,
sure.
I was not good. And then I had a very small stint at a fruit tree nursery, and I was amazed at these people. They were like grafting cherimoya.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they were just like doon, shh, done,
Yeah,
done,
probably.
done.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
Say that again?
Do it by hand, I'm assuming, too, like with a knife?
And quickly, yeah, it was impressive. I was genuinely impressed. I'm impressed with anyone who can pull that off. But
Wow.
yeah, I would breed peppers like some people breed cannabis.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
I feel like
what
people
I
are gonna
mean is
blame. Go
what
ahead.
I mean is I would breed like two crosses and go, oh, it's a new one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it is a
yeah,
new
yeah.
one, but like
Stable, I promise.
right.
Sure. I feel like people are going to blame us for collusion because you are an IPM guy and I'm out here trying to spread ditchweed throughout Washington.
Oh,
And then
right.
you get on here and say that ditchweed's where all the mites live.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
no, no, no. Well, it could. Well, let's just put it this way. It could be.
It
Um,
probably is.
there.
Russet mites like weed, and if it's growing all over.
Well, the thing about the thing about the hemp russet mice are they're specialists, so they don't feed on anything else to our knowledge. To our knowledge, but again, we could have a
Yeah,
little
so,
bit more research to confirm it.
so if I got ditchweed spreading all over the Northwest, everybody's fucked.
It could be, but there could
Yeah,
also be beneficials that keep that population in check.
yeah, like pigs. Pigs are going to eat the ditchweed. That's the whole plan.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that like if they're not like if it's not unrestricted, right? If it's not unrestricted growth,
I don't know, man. Nobody. It's like the blackberries, right? Like the guy that spread the Himalayan blackberry up here. It's
right?
everywhere. Like I can look over. Look, there it is. Everywhere you
Yeah.
go in Washington, you can find some fucking blackberry everywhere.
You might get that problem. You might end up getting that problem too. But like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to. This could be a situation where, whether we want to or not, maybe the ecologist would tell us whether that would be smart. Because really, honestly, we don't know a lot about can. I mean, if I'm giving you an intellectually honest answer, my gut opinion is maybe you don't have a ton out there for that reason, but that's only based on the very limited amount of information we have. And the intellectually honest answer, I think, is well, maybe not.
yeah, we'll see.
You know what
Who
I mean?
knows?
Yeah. I
Sure.
certainly don't. I just think in this case.
As part of your IPM, has anybody questioned like stray pollen? Like, hey, I'm going to be growing a bunch of cannabis, and there's hemp farms around. Should I be worried? And if so, do you have a solution?
I don't have a solution.
You
And
don't know the
I
ditchweed.
don't know if they should be worried, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well, like, do you mean, well, okay, from an IPM perspective, do you mean, like, do I think that it's possible that plants could get pollinated? Yes. So, like,
Yeah. So then, should
so I'll
people have
answer
a
that.
plant?
Right. So,
Is
like,
there a solution?
right, like, I don't, like, I mean, there is the cannabis cryptic virus that I was talking about before, but, um, and it can spread, if I'm reading the research report right, it can spread through pollen and through egg. So a male can carry the virus in the pollen. Very, very rarely this is the case with plant viruses.
What do you mean egg?
Like the ovum of
Oh, okay,
the
gotcha. Plant, yeah.
not like an actual egg, but you
I
know what
thought
I
you meant
mean.
maybe bug egg or something. Yeah, I follow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some
Uh,
people ask me about russet mites if they can like bore into the like hull of the seed and like reside there, and that's as far as I understand, that's not the case. Russet mites have very bad, like they're not
yeah,
very good.
sure.
Most russet mites are actually not pests. There's like 6,600 species
What do they
or
just feed
something.
on other bugs?
No, most russet mites. So the reason why we know there's so many is because there's this research report where somebody put a bunch of like water, like what's the word? Trays, just trays filled with water on skyscrapers, and then
Yeah,
just aerially through the wind, they were able to get like 3,000 in like
what?
one
That's crazy.
different species. Different species, and what we know about Areophiidae right now is that they're usually special, that they're almost always species specific, and so because of that, that's where I get my information as to why I don't think the hemp russet mite Aculops cannabicola is on other plants.
Sure. Well, that's weird.
So
Yeah, I
most of them
mean,
don't do any damage to the plants they feed on,
but the one that
or
was
very
just
little.
on cannabis, I guess it's weird just to think about like where did it come from? How did it get here? It's just been hanging out with cannabis plants ever since it came across on a boat.
Like literally, yes. As far as we understand it, as far as I understand it, yes.
Oh, that's
Which
very
is why I
weird.
make the ditchweed. Yeah, which is kind of why I make the ditchweed comment a little bit, right?
Well, it's interesting that they found 3,000 of them in little dishes, and each one of those species was specific to another species of plants. That means there must have been a host nearby. So 3,000 different species of plants nearby, right?
Some of these mites can probably move like 1 or 2 or multiple kilometers in the air as what's
Yeah,
called aeroplankton. A lot of pest insects actually
sure.
um, do that, and but I would say that we don't know what species they're on. We only know that they're different than they're documented, but they're not identified. And you actually russet mites look so similar to each other typically that you like need the host to like match them up.
Yeah, just based on their habitat. A lot of mushrooms are the same way. You know, you can only tell the
Yeah.
difference between what tree it's growing on or whether it's growing on a dead tree or a live tree. Sure, that makes a lot
Yeah,
of
it's
sense.
basically like that, and then they're like so small. You need like there's like I don't know how many like acarologists there are that do russet mites, but it's probably like less, probably more than I can count, but not much more than I can count on my hands.
They got their own name, acarologists.
Well, acarologist is a mite specialist, and then in the mites, you would need somebody who knows the Areophiidae. It's like who knows that? I don't really know how small it is.
Yeah, fun. I mean, you got to dedicate your life's research to something.
Right. Well, this is why you get a PhD or
Yeah.
multiple.
So someone else can pay for your life's pursuits.
You can live in the wizard's tower, and
Yeah, or on campus in the frat house. That'd be fun too.
that's
This is our
it's
bug.
but fraternizing with the students is usually frowned upon.
Sure, sure. So I see you post a lot of studies and stuff. So I'm assuming you spend a decent amount of time on Google Scholar.
I do.
What's your favorite keyword?
Oh,
Favorite
good
search term?
question. Good question. I think that my favorite is probably symbiont. I really like uh,
Symbiont.
like microbial symbionts.
I see.
I think that's probably my favorite that comes to my mind because I like this. I like the like Russian nesting doll aspect of a symbiont in a microbe in some populations of a bug that feed on a plant that causes effects for the bug, the parasite that tries to kill the bug, and the plant. Like
Nice.
just this one little thing. Or you have a hyper symbiont on the symbiont, and there's a frog on the knot on the log, and it's like that song.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and then you also are going to stumble into a bunch of other random shit, not just the bugs, but all sorts of fun things in life that have crazy symbiotic relationships. All right, that's a good one. I'm going to write that one down or bug you about it later. Symbiont.
No, please do, please
Yeah.
do. And then
But
but here's another one. Hollow biome or hollow genome is also a good one I like.
hollow, spell that one. Like hollow,
HOLO,
okay.
like holographic,
Yeah.
like
And
like holistic.
yeah, yep. Okay, so same root.
Hmm.
Interesting.
And that's like all the genomes of all the like the microbial, like the microbiome, right? Is
Hmm.
all the microbes in the virome is all the viruses known in the humans. For example, a human virome.
Yeah.
So like the hologenome is all of those genomes in a single unit, whether it's a person's body or a forest or
And you can
like the
take
earth.
you can extrapolate that out as far as you want. Like there's an Earth hollow geom, right? Okay.
Exactly. It would be all the genomes of all the creatures everywhere that have genomes.
But it can go fully micro too. Like you can apply it specifically to like a person, like you said, or very specifically the hollow genome of mites.
Yeah, or like a cells, or like this, or like in a certain like a little microbe. Like what are all of the viruses that infect this microbe or something?
How do
You
you
could
spell
do
that?
that.
The first one you
Hollow
mentioned, right? Yeah, I got that one. Someone asked, "How do you spell the other one you mentioned?" What did you say? Symbiosis or symbi?
symbiont, like Symbiont, symbiont,
Oh,
or
symbiont.
yeah, symbiont.
Meaning about derivative, but yeah, sure. Okay.
It's the same. Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
I am fastidious and pedantic. So I usually try to get that right,
No,
but
those two.
I get things wrong.
No doubt. Yeah. So what? I'm sure you got some new fun posts brewing. What are you interested in right now? What are you investigating?
Um, Say that again. Sorry, I blanked out.
No, you're good. Like what are you looking at right now? What's your next post going to be, or do you just do them by the seat of your pants when you hear about something interesting, or
So sometimes they are like if I come across something really cool, it's like I want to get that out because that's
sure,
interesting.
sure.
I just made a post about like liverworts, which are like the first land plants that ever kind
Yeah,
of got
came
out,
in.
and I actually didn't know that until like a year and a half ago, myself, or maybe I learned it and forgot it, but like I relearned it at least then, uh, and it was cool because they were researching. The researchers were looking at how a pythium or a phytophthora um, pathogen infected it, and basically they're trying to look for like the evolutionary
Mm,
like the immune system of plants now, but like tracking it back to
right.
like the beginning.
And trying to see if like a virus instigated the change that caused the evolution.
All kinds of things, like what pathogen caused, like what was the interaction that caused these genes to change, or what
Right.
has been conserved like in a gene family um, in such an ancestor, right? So like kind of like because and here's another thing. I don't know how you feel about this, but personally, when people tell me like if a plant is healthy enough that it can like be immune to all of these
Sure.
problems, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree with the sentiment that a plant that is kept a specific way, whether you call it healthy or not, like that's kind of a nebulous term because like a wine grower might like let their soil dry out a lot because it makes the fruit change so they can make certain kinds of wine, but they still keep the plant relative healthy in all these other ways.
Uh-huh.
What you call healthy or not is kind of weird, but regardless, then if a plant is healthy enough, then then pests will not be as they can fight off diseases better. Sure, they can fight off pests better. Absolutely, but like immune means something very specific,
Of course. Yeah. Um,
and resistance is a gradient.
of course. Of course. Yeah, because you could be resistant to one mite, but you got 100 million of them. Resistance might not quite be the same.
Sure, and like if resistance means like it feeds a little bit or a lot less, but it still kind of like will feed a little bit. But yeah, if you get like 100,
Yeah.
you might have the pest like with two-spotted spider mite, like Tetranychus urticae. It's so good at adapting to new cultivars of species or new species in general. It's on 1,200 different plants. Its genome is meant to be very plastic. So like, you're dealing with something that's like made to adapt. And so when
Right.
that happens, you might have a resistant cultivar for only a few years
Hmm.
or 6 months.
Yeah. And if you're growing 200 acres of it, you might be fucked.
You might not even be able to. This is the same thing with like chemical pesticides too. Like, not that people should be using, but like natural or artificial, like things adapt always, always, even biocontrol agents. Although I know
Sure.
that's a contentious point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got like in here a couple of comments have mentioned just in this last bit about using terpenes for IPM, which I'm sure have the same thing. These might, they may work the first time, but the mites, if one fraction of 1% of them survives and breeds, and now is resistant to your terpenes, and oh well, superbugs, right? That's a real thing.
That's a real thing, right? Yeah, and that's actually one reason why I'm like cautiously optimistic um about that use, about using terpenes. I think it's a really good idea, a cool idea to utilize natural compounds as much as possible.
Sure.
It's kind of like alcohol, right? Like to sterilize something, like something very fundamental has to happen to the way that it controls the way that it controls the microbe is like not a thing that is easy to adapt to. Something very fundamental about the microbe has to change in order for it to be more, depending on the microbe. But
Right.
um, and even some microbes aren't affected, or you need a certain amount of time, or whatever. So like,
Yeah, or third volume. Yeah, like in here, Steel Rolling says, has that happened with terpenes? And it's like, well, if you drown all of them in terpenes, if they all literally are swimming in the terpenes and every one of them dies, then yeah, none of them are going to be resistant to the terpene, right? So
Right. This is why the rate of application is so important. And with like neurotoxins, like that's why you get resistance. Sometimes it's a coverage thing.
sure.
People, if the sprayer doesn't spray right, or it's a massive population and they're white flies and they fly around, you know what I mean? It can be hard. Like I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that people are lazy or anything like that. It's a tough agriculture is a tough job
Oh,
and like
absolutely. You can't adapt as fast as everything out there is adapting to what you're trying to do. And if you, especially if you're trying to
yeah.
grow a monocrop for profit, like good luck. Nature is not on your side trying to do that.
Yeah. I mean like there's so many lessons that we've learned from that, right? Like um well, like the some of the people that I work with in the floriculture industry and how like, every year, week 29, week 30, they get a spike, a huge spike of leaf miner flies, and they use a biological control agent that is a parasite, it's a parasitic wasp.
Yeah.
And like it's like it doesn't matter because like around that time, that's when it's like June or July or something when it's really hot and like the population just crests and this big population from outside like comes back
Yeah.
and it's like like so you do have to be aggressive, but if you're a human and you can recognize patterns, you can like kind of like plan for that.
Yeah, like this happens every year at the same time, and these effects aren't working, so let's adapt. We
But
can
so many
hope.
people don't even do that, which is one thing in the IPM. Like if like when I work with people, that's an important thing is to have a plan before you have the problem.
Yeah, right. Instead of trying to react to problems after the fact, like those, if you could squash those guys before they all pop out of the eggs, you might be a little more effective than trying to get them when they're all
Right.
breeding.
Yeah, the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Yeah, for sure. So I just have a couple more generic questions for you that I read are a good idea to ask when you're doing something like this.
Sure.
So if you were going to tell anybody here that maybe is looking to get into, developing their own IPM skills, maybe becoming an IPM consultant down the road someday, what is something that you wish you had known when you started this all out?
Sure. So one thing that would have been nice to know, or there's a few things. A lot of it I kind of figured by living in California like my whole life, but um, to be general, so I'll give you two big answers. One is that like I assumed erroneously that a lot of my superiors would know a lot more than me, and that was not true. But that's not necessarily IPM specific.
Sure. It's life.
Um, that's kind of a life thing, right? So that's kind of not a good answer. I think that specifically for me, it was like there's a lot of older people. There's a lot of older people in this industry. Like I think the median farmer age in Pennsylvania is like 65 is the
Yeah, I think
median age.
nationally it's like 70.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And like, there are less farmers than there ever have been before, as I
Like
understand it,
1%
and
of our population right now grows food.
something like that, right?
Yeah, something ridiculous.
And another thing that I didn't have a healthy respect for, I feel like in the beginning, I got lucky. There were a lot of things that I felt like I was very cautious about and kind of knew going in, which was helpful. But one thing that I didn't really have a lot of respect for was like just the variety of life that exists and like all of the different like I love it, but I didn't realize how much there was and like differences and like formulations for certain compounds or like the various different biocontrol agents. And now it's something that I didn't know it, and when I found out about it, I latched on and I love it. And
Yeah.
so that's why I'm so technical about it now. It's because I find that so fascinating, and it's really important to consider like this cultivar grows one way and this cultivar grows another way, and we can't use the persimilis on the hairy tomatoes because the trichomes affect them. Like
Right.
that's the kind of esoteric knowledge that growers never get. And these older people are so set in their ways a lot of the time that they don't want to change, or it's not something they can do.
Right, can't afford
Um,
to.
they can't afford to. Yeah, a lot of reasons. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus.
No, for sure. Old
But
people have more risk, you know, like if they change and shit hits the fan and you're 65, it's a lot harder to
yeah,
restart.
yeah, it's understandable. It's understandable. I mean, it's kind of a privileged position somewhat to say, like, as a 27-year-old, why don't you just change
Yeah.
everything you've been doing? Why don't you
But
just do that?
that's wrong. We got a new way.
Yeah. If you were an elf and you lived forever, maybe that would be an option.
Yeah, that'd be
But
great.
yeah.
Coming, yeah, maybe our generation.
Maybe we'll be the transhumanists.
I guess I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh well.
What's something that you failed at?
I this is a pithy answer, but I failed to be a good employee. Um,
I'm a
I thought
terrible.
I think you'd appreciate that.
Yeah,
I couldn't leave well enough alone. See, my job was to be the IPM, basically their IPM facilitator, and the one company in particular that I worked with was like this. The supervisor was just not having the new information. He's just not appreciating the fact that the administration's very politely going, "Hey, you should do different things. Here's this person who like knows about this stuff." And no. So I couldn't leave well enough alone. I was a dogged, like, enthusiastic person who wanted to be like, no, this is the information. Here's like and it made me it made me one of those people who always has to back up what they say with evidence, or always is not ready to like say anything without like being able to like launch a missile. Oh, you want to hear? Oh, don't take my word for it. Boom, there's a research report. Oh, there's a research report. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's
Here's the
maybe a
science. Science says it.
was that the answer? Was that answer kind of like saying like, "What's your greatest weakness?" Oh, I have no weaknesses. Like,
Yeah,
truly, I have screwed up. I've misidentified. I mean, there's a lot of things where I'll either misidentify something, or you just give the wrong call.
sure.
Everyone does it.
Yeah, nothing, but no monumental. Well, I guess that's a pretty monumental one. Realizing, you know, while you're balls deep in a job, that being an
Mhm.
employee is not for you because that's a major life change. So that's a good failure to experience and learn from, in my opinion.
One thing, let's see. Like, I'm sure that I have one. I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I can't think of a time.
Sure, I think
But
on the spot though, so it's
let's go to the next question. I'll come back to that.
okay. This is my last formal one that I have, and I was thinking we probably maybe open up to just some light questions from the audience after this one. But
Ooh, I like
this
that.
it's like a cop out. But is there anything that you might have expected I asked that I didn't? Did I miss anything as an interviewer? Like, if there's something you wish you could have said, but I didn't give you the opportunity?
No, you've been very nice.
Okay,
But
good.
I like your permaculture. I like your permaculture stuff, and I think I like to geek out about like we kind of talked about it, but like ecology and like how if you're trying to incorporate agriculture with like natural systems and holistic
Sure.
systems, like I always like to say that IPM is a holistic system. It
Of
is
course.
not just using biocontrols.
Sure. It's not just
And
we have bugs. That's the problem. It's, you know, it's everything.
right, and so I think we got to talk about that a little bit too. But like permaculture and agriculture and making the conventional kind of hybridize and perhaps even be overmatched by the more permaculture type works. I think that's a really cool thing, and I think that in this world of the internet, we can. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to get access to any of the information that I have access to pretty much without the internet.
Sure.
That's not an exaggeration.
Yeah, no, that's real. I mean, we live in the greatest time to be a human, at least for communication. Like, there's never been a time like this where we can communicate with everyone on Earth and all knowledge is immediately available to everyone. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, there's still some like things that are regressed and we can't always get access to them, but it is true. Like for the vast majority of things, like I'm just happy that that is possible. And I will say this. I do credit most of my like learning from like not school, both before school, which really prepared me for, like just the naturalist in me that allowed me to like love bugs and well, nobody's gonna care about this when I grow up. And hey, actually, you live in California. People care about that a lot. It's just a lot of
Yeah.
people don't want to touch them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bugs are important. Most people just don't want them in their house.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that was helpful. And then afterwards, most of like, like I have a friend of mine who's a PhD, and sometimes I have her help me like get access to files because like I don't have access to the library or something. And it's been not she commented bemused that like she works with PhDs all the time, but I'm probably the only one that she knows that looks for so many and reads so many. So
Well, yeah, and that issue runs deep in all of the kind of medical field or in a lot of professional fields is where they get so tied up with their job and they don't have time to
oh
spend
yeah.
trolling the internet for research papers and they fall behind. And all of a sudden you look back and you're 65 years old and stuck in your ways and all the young people are blowing up everything you've done because the internet's out there. A really interesting example I've seen is Egyptology, where they've built these careers on these textbooks on what they assumed was the right way. And now that we have this research coming out to say, hey, maybe the Sphinx is older than we thought it was, or maybe Egypt's been around a lot longer. And it's like, well, everything I did over the last 40 years was based on the opposite being true. So I'm just going to turn my back to it. And I'm not going to spend any time researching that. So we see that in a lot of different industries where they're either stubborn or they just don't have the time to keep themselves updated. Like medical nutrition is another huge one where most people don't have the time.
Like I have a question for you. This is totally like, do you think that if humans were effectively, I mean, let's not consider any of the ramifications of this like question. Like just in this particular case, do
Right.
you think that like if humans lived a lot longer or maybe even like essentially forever, like not considering the reproductive all that kind of stuff, do you think we would be psychologically more likely to be more accepting of knowledge like that, or do you think we would be even more stubborn and like people who would like live for thousands of years would just be like, no, veto, like you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and my girlfriend and I just like binge watched the HBO series True Blood, and the premise is that there's like these vampires that have been around forever, and in that case, most of the older ones get wiser, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't eat all the humans, and maybe we should live in symbiosis with it, but they're vampires,
Mm.
and humans are fucking stupid, so no, we'd probably be completely entrenched in our ways, I imagine, as we currently are. And I think
I feel
everybody
like that's
jerking
true.
off all the time. There'd just be a bunch of porn and jerking off. So no, I think living longer is probably not a good thing for humans. I think we'd be worse.
It's like when you consider the atrocities, right? Like that have happened. It's
Yeah,
hard to argue with that, honestly. Like some other fundamental things would have to change about us, not just our lifespan, right? Probably.
sure.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, and then because not so much living forever. That's not what interests me the most. It's what something I hear on Joe Rogan more and more lately. Smart people talking about is what happens when everything that we're thinking is immediately available to everybody else. Like because we're only a couple steps away from that. Right now, I got to hold this phone to talk to you, but we can't be more than a generation or two away from that being completely integrated, and that's just a couple steps away from our brain just directly communicating with each other. What the fuck happens then?
So there's this really great Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, and you'll be able to anyone who's listening will be able to find it because it's the only one in binary. I don't remember what it says, but the Federation talks with these things called the binars, I think, and they're basically like that. They are able to. They have like at birth they're like they replace like part of their lobe with like basically a one-to-one or a one-to-multiple like server, and they're able to communicate in high speed to each other and seek consensus, kind of like the Geth if you play video games or things like that. And
Yeah.
I won't give away the show, but I think that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, it is because it changes human psychology. Absolutely. Like, there's no more
Now,
lies. There's no more, hiding anything. Everything's completely out in the open. And honestly, I think it's going to make us
well,
better.
well, in the binar, well, in that case, they are capable of deception, and they do. I won't give away the show, but they do deceive. But you're talking about like a literal like a hive mind or like a multi-consciousness sort of like feed that's like unfiltered.
Sure. I think that's where we're going because
Yeah.
we're kind of close. We're kind of close to it right now. There's a little bit of a filter in the lag between your brain and your thumb and your phone. But and I get it's it's ridiculous to postulate on it because human mind is an incredible thing. So yeah, you're right. Maybe when that happens, we figure out a way real quickly to deceive it. But if we
I
can't,
saw well no, I saw an interesting not to interrupt, but I think that like if well I keep reading these reports and I don't know their veracity because I'm not a neuroscience scientist, but like like people talking about computers and others who can like predict what you're going to think about something like 12 seconds before, like subconscious to like consciousness, and how there's if we
yeah,
can bridge that gap, or maybe that's a terrible thing to do,
I was gonna say then we're
or
really fucked. They don't even
or
know
we're
if I'm lying to you.
right, but like imagine if that back end is like the feed. So like I don't know, there's like a so like we would be thinking, or our sentiments maybe could be like transferred before our thoughts, like our logical thought words, possibly. Wittgenstein would have a field day with that one.
Yeah, that sounds like that movie where they, you get arrested for preconceived notions. Like I thought about murdering him, so everybody, I forget which one that is, Minority Report or one of those ones. But that's now you're talking about some scary
Right,
shit.
but you did seriously consider attacking the president. Do you deny that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe half the country's gonna be locked up.
Yeah.
Shit. Hey man, this was great. I really appreciate you getting on here. I guess real quick before we go, if anybody has any questions, now's the chance. Toss them in there. Maybe we'll go like 5-10 minutes if anybody has any. If not, we'll close this up. And after I get back through the run, I'm definitely gonna put you on the list, and maybe we'll do a longer form podcast.
I'd be down.
Yeah, probably a couple months out. I got a bunch of affiliates I'm gonna do this with first, but I'd love to do a longer form with you here in a bit.
No, I'd love to do that. That sounds very fun.
Cool, man. Let's see. We got one right here. You see that? Sink Angel was a farmer in California. Other
If I
than
was a farmer, what would my major crop be? Probably cannabis.
other than cannabis, right? Peppers
A,
doesn't
a
sound.
lot of a lot of people are switching to it. A lot of people are very much considering switching to this cash crop because, okay, a lot of agriculturalists are both like poor and rich, and that's a hard dichotomy. A lot of people struggle with it, but it depends on what kind of farmer, what are your yields, what are you selling, how is it. There's a market and there's influences.
Yeah.
I try to keep up to date on California, and like for example, there's not a demand to meet the supply of tomatoes, so
Right.
people try to market them better or something. Right. I don't want to be stuck in a situation where I have to like over market my product, I guess.
Sure. It's kind of where we're at with. I mean, our whole system is not even I grow food to show other people how you can grow food like we grow food, and people pay to come visit the farm and see and eat the food. I'm never selling food. I don't give a fuck about selling food. I'm selling experience. The idea.
That's definitely a thing. A lot of people don't realize the power
Incredible.
of that.
Especially in California. Fuck, that would be my crop is education.
Educational crop. Well, me too, right?
Sure.
I plant the seeds though.
In the brains or in the ground?
Both.
Mark, when are we doing this again? It sounds like Sink and I will probably do a little longer form conversation, I guess, here in a couple months, and I will be doing these. Target is weekly, probably bi-weekly with all of the Good Life Gang affiliates. So that's when we're going to do this one again. Look, we got any thoughts on high Brix levels and pest resistance?
Sure. I mean, I think it really depends on the species of plant you're talking about and a lot of other factors and what the pests are. Because some pests are like, they're not going to. It's so. I hate giving this answer because my answer to a lot of things is it depends, and that's not a very satisfying answer. But I do think that but like quick hot take, yes, they help.
Yeah.
Like, but no on the immunity. Yes, sure. On the resistance.
In general, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
if they're in the right level, if they're more, that can also be detrimental. They should be at the right levels, and that depends on how you're growing and a lot of other things.
Of course. Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap this up with my dad's question. What are my thoughts on African tree goats? And the answer, Dad, is that goats go in trees on all continents. So Doesn't matter where you're at. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. It's been real, man. I really appreciate your time, and this was fun.
It was very fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. My YouTube channel, shameless plug, my YouTube channel is Zenthanol. If you want, do you want to like put this up on your channel or whatever you're doing, or do you mind like sending me the?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll share it with you. It's probably going to be a pretty decent size file, so let me see what it looks like in the best way. I'll put it up in like a drive and then share you the link on the drive so you can get it on your own.
I'd be happy to host it on my channel if you want, if that's okay with you, so that people. This is a really good conversation.
No, this is great. As long as I don't botch the like the downloading of it right now, I think we'll be set.
Right, I've done that. Just get that save. Just get that save.
Press in and press save, and then just leave it alone so it downloads. But yeah, no, definitely, this is your content as much as it's mine. Kind of the same deal. Use it however you'd like. That's what it's all about.
And I have a lot of stuff on plant physiology, pests, IPM, all that kind of stuff on my YouTube channel. Zenthanol, this video will be on it then. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I've really enjoyed it, and that's what I wanted to say.
Right on. Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.